The garage was my sanctuary at midnight. Under the flickering fluorescent lights, with grease under my fingernails and the smell of motor oil in the air, I could forget about everything else. My 1967 Mustang sat before me like a patient on an operating table, her engine block exposed, waiting for my skilled hands to bring her back to life. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I was Jack Morrison, 43 years old, owner of Morrison's Auto Repair on the shabby side of Millbrook, Massachusetts. This decaying New England mill town had seen better days, with its crumbling brick buildings and boarded-up storefronts. But I'd built something here. A reputation, a business, a life. My phone buzzed against the workbench. Without looking up from the carburetor I was rebuilding, I reached for it, expecting maybe a late-night emergency call from a stranded motorist. The message wasn't for me. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night, beautiful. The Riverside Motel, same room. I need you so bad. Love, Greg. My hands froze. The wrench slipped from my fingers, clattering to the concrete floor. This was my wife's phone. Alison had left it charging on my workbench when she'd kissed me goodnight 2 hours ago, claiming she was exhausted from another long day at the wellness center where she worked as senior manager. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then lit up again with another message. P.S. Wear that black thing I bought you. You know how crazy it drives me. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a steel cable around my ribs and was cranking it tight. 22 years of marriage. 22 years of building a life together. Raising our daughter Sam, working my ass off to provide for my family while Alison climbed the corporate ladder at Serenity Springs Wellness Center. Greg. I knew exactly who that was. Greg Patterson, her boss. Mid-40s, silver-haired, drove a BMW, lived in one of those glass and steel condos they'd built on the hill overlooking our dying downtown. I'd met him at company parties, shaken his soft, manicured hand while he looked through me like I was invisible. Alison's husband, he'd say with that practiced smile. The mechanic, right? Like it was something to be ashamed of. Like the calluses on my hands and the honest sweat on my brow made me less of a man than his expense accounts and corner office. I picked up the wrench and hurled it across the garage. It struck the far wall with a satisfying crash, leaving a dent in the pegboard where I kept my tools organized with military precision. The smart thing would have been to march upstairs, wake Alison, and confront her. Demand answers. Fight for my marriage like a good husband should. But I wasn't feeling particularly good right then. I was feeling like a fool who'd been played for years while everyone else was in on the joke. Instead, I did what any self-respecting mechanic would do. I started planning. The next morning, I watched Alison get ready for work with new eyes. She stood at our bedroom mirror, applying makeup with the kind of care she used to reserve for special occasions. The black lace lingerie set peeking out from under her professional blazer wasn't something I'd seen before. You look nice, I said from the doorway, testing the waters. She glanced at me in the mirror. Thanks. Big presentation today? With Greg? Among others. Her voice was steady, practiced. How long had she been lying to my face? What time will you be home? Late, probably very late. Don't wait up. I nodded and kissed her cheek, tasting the expensive perfume she'd started wearing 6 months ago. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. After she left, I called my shop foreman, Mike Kowalski, and told him I'd be in late. Mike had been my friend since high school, back when we'd both dreamed of getting out of Millbrook. He'd stayed to run his father's bar, O'Malley's, while I'd built my garage from nothing. He was one of the few people in town I trusted completely. That evening, I parked my pickup truck across from the Riverside Inn, a rundown motel on the edge of town that rented rooms by the hour to people who didn't want to be seen. The neon sign flickered vacancy in hot pink letters, half of them burned out. At 8:15, Alison's Honda pulled into the parking lot. She sat in the car for a moment, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror before walking to room 237. Her movements were confident, familiar. This wasn't her first time here. 10 minutes later, Greg's BMW purred into the lot like a predator. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around nervously. He walked straight to the door and knocked twice, then once. A signal. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, taking pictures with my phone whenever they passed by the window. My hands shook with rage, but my mind was clear. Crystal clear. As I was about to leave, headlights swept across my windshield. A red Mazda pulled up beside me, and I recognized the driver immediately. Tessa Brennan, Alison's best friend since college, a sharp-faced woman with bottle blonde hair and a tongue like a razor blade. She'd never liked me, made that clear from day one. She rolled down her window and smiled at me. Not a friendly smile, a knowing one. Well, Jack Morrison. Fancy meeting you here. Tessa. Doing a little bird watching? I said nothing, but she saw the camera in my lap. You know, Jack, some birds have been flying around for a long time. Smart birds. Careful birds. She leaned closer. Birds that make sure they're not the only ones who might get their wings clipped. Before I could ask what the hell that meant, she drove away, leaving me with more questions than answers. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my garage, staring at the photos on my phone and thinking about 22 years of marriage. The late nights Alison claimed were work emergencies. The business trips that seemed to happen more and more frequently. The way she'd grown distant, distracted, like she was living a life I wasn't part of. The next morning, I made coffee and waited for her to come downstairs. She appeared at 7:30, dressed for another day at the office, acting like nothing had changed. Sleep well? I asked. Like a baby. You were up late. I heard you in the garage. Couldn't sleep. Had a lot on my mind. She poured herself coffee and checked her phone. I watched her face for any sign of guilt, any crack in the mask, but she was good. Years of practice, I supposed. Jack, we need to talk about something. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had she seen me at the motel? Was she finally going to confess? I've been thinking about us, about our marriage. What about it? She sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, helped Sam with homework, planned our future together. We've grown apart. You must feel it too. We're like strangers living in the same house. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. She was setting me up, preparing the narrative for when she left me for Greg. I don't feel that way, I said carefully. Don't you? When's the last time we really talked? When's the last time we made love? When's the last time you were home long enough for either? Her face hardened. That's not fair. I work hard for this family. So do I. I know you do, but Jack, be honest. Are you happy? Really happy? I looked at my wife of 22 years, the mother of my child, the woman I'd built my entire adult life around, and realized I was looking at a stranger. Are you? I asked. She hesitated just long enough to give me my answer. I think we should consider counseling, or maybe some time apart, just to figure things out. There it was, the setup. Soon she'd be telling people that our marriage had been troubled for years, that we'd grown apart naturally, that sometimes these things just happen. No one would ever know about Greg, about the motel rooms, about the lies. If that's what you want, I said. Relief flickered across her face. I think it might be best, for both of us. After she left for work, I called Mike and asked him to meet me at the shop. When he arrived, I showed him the photos. Jesus Christ, Jack. He stared at the images on my phone. How long has this been going on? I don't know. Months, maybe years. Mike was a big man, 6'4", with hands like ham hocks from years of bouncing drunks out of his bar. Right now, those hands were clenched into fists. What are you going to do? I'm going to make them pay. Jack, be careful. Don't do anything stupid. Stupid would be pretending this isn't happening. Stupid would be letting them make a fool out of me while the whole town watches. Mike studied my face. You've got a plan. I'm working on it. Need help? That's why Mike was my best friend. No judgment, no lectures about taking the high road, just loyalty. Maybe, but Mike, if this goes sideways, it won't, and if it does, we'll handle it together. I started small. Reconnaissance, Mike called it. I knew Greg's routines from the company parties I'd suffered through over the years. He was a creature of habit, a man who liked his comfort and predictability. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he had lunch at Chez Laurent, the fancy French place downtown where they charged $30 for a sandwich. He always parked his BMW in the same spot, under the oak tree in the restaurant's private lot. On Thursday afternoon, while Greg was inside impressing some client with his sophisticated palate, I paid his car a visit. Nothing dramatic, just a little creative maintenance. I loosened his valve caps just enough to create a slow leak. By the time he finished his escargot, all 4 tires would be flat. I also took the liberty of removing a few key fuses from his electrical system and loosening his battery cables. Then I waited across the street and watched. Greg emerged from the restaurant at 2:15, laughing with his lunch companion, probably telling him about the little woman he was screwing on the side. His confident stride faltered when he saw his car sitting on 4 flat tires like a beached whale. The look on his face was worth every risk I'd taken. Confusion, then anger, then the dawning realization that this was going to ruin his afternoon. He called for a tow truck, then stood there in his $1,000 suit, sweating in the afternoon sun while other diners walked past and tried not to stare. I drove home whistling. That evening, Alison came home earlier than usual, around 8 o'clock. She seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Everything okay at work?" I asked. "Fine, just some drama with Greg's car. Someone vandalized it." "That's terrible. Any idea who?" "Probably just random. You know how people are about anyone who's successful in this town." The irony was delicious. She was defending her lover to her husband, never suspecting that the vandal was sitting right across from her. "I hope they catch whoever did it," I said with a straight face. "I'm sure they will. Greg's pretty upset about it." I'll bet he was. Word spread quickly through Millbrook's gossip network. By Friday morning, everyone knew about Greg Patterson's car trouble. At O'Malley's that night, the story had grown into a full-scale attack by person or persons unknown. "Heard they slashed all his tires and poured sugar in his gas tank," said Tommy Ricci, a plumber who'd gone to high school with Mike and me. "I heard they spray-painted asshole on his windshield," added Janet Murphy, who worked at the bank. None of it was true, but I wasn't correcting anyone. Let the legend grow. Mike slid a beer across the bar to me. "Feeling better?" "It's a start. What's next?" Before I could answer, the conversation at the other end of the bar caught my attention. 3 women were huddled together, speaking in low voices. I recognized them as part of Alison's social circle from the wellness center. "I feel so bad for her," one of them was saying. "She tries to put on a brave face, but you can tell she's miserable." 22 years is a long time to throw away," said another. "Sometimes marriages just run their course. Look at my sister and her husband. They stayed together for the kids, and it was torture for everyone. At least Alison has options. Greg really cares about her." My blood turned to ice water. They were talking about my wife, about my marriage, and they were talking about it like it was already over. "She deserves to be happy," the first woman continued. "Jack's a nice enough guy, but let's be honest. What does he have to offer someone like Alison? She's educated, sophisticated, ambitious. He fixes cars. And Greg is so successful. That new condo of his is gorgeous. I heard he's thinking about proposing." The beer bottle shattered in my grip. The women turned to stare as blood dripped from my palm onto the bar. "Jesus, Jack!" Mike grabbed a towel and wrapped it around my hand. "What happened?" "Oh, bottle slipped." I kept my voice steady, but inside I was screaming. Mike walked me to the back room and cleaned up my hand while the women whispered among themselves. I could feel their eyes on me, could practically hear them adding this to their gossip arsenal. Poor Jack Morrison, falling apart at O'Malley's. You can see why Alison's looking elsewhere. "You okay?" Mike asked. "No, I'm not okay. They're planning my funeral while I'm still breathing." "Who's planning what?" I told him what I'd overheard. Mike's face darkened with each word. "Those bitches. They don't know anything about you or your marriage." "Don't they? Sounds like they know more than I do." Mike finished bandaging my hand and sat back. "So what now?" "Now I stop playing defense and go on the attack. Modern warfare is fought on social media, and I was about to launch a full-scale assault. But first, I needed ammunition. I started by doing what any suspicious husband would do. I began paying attention to my wife's digital footprint. Alison had always been careless with passwords, using the same one for everything, Sam's birthday plus our anniversary year. Her Instagram account was a carefully curated showcase of her new life. Photos from expensive restaurants I'd never been to, selfies and outfits I'd never seen, check-ins at places she'd never mentioned visiting. But the real goldmine was her private messages. Months of conversations with Greg, intimate details about their affair that made my stomach turn. But more importantly, evidence of how long this had been going on and how many people knew about it. Tessa wasn't just aware of the affair. She was actively helping to cover it up. She'd been providing alibis, making reservations, even lending Alison her apartment for afternoon encounters. There were messages with other women from the wellness center discussing Alison's situation and offering advice on how to handle Jack. When she finally left me. They'd been planning this for months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to pay for our daughter's college fund, they'd been plotting my humiliation. But the most damaging evidence was in Alison's messages with Sam. My daughter knew about the affair. She'd known for weeks and had been begging her mother to tell me the truth. "Dad doesn't deserve this, Mom. He's a good man." "You don't understand, sweetheart. Your father and I have grown apart. This isn't about Greg." "It's exactly about Greg. Everyone at school is talking about it." My hand shook as I read that last message. Everyone at school was talking about it. My daughter was being humiliated because of her mother's choices, and I hadn't even known. That's when I decided to go nuclear. I created a fake Instagram account and began following everyone in Alison's social circle. Then I started screenshotting conversations and creating a digital dossier of evidence. But I didn't post anything yet. I had a better idea. Saturday morning, Sam came home from her friend's house with red eyes and a defiant expression that reminded me of myself at 18. "We need to talk," she said. "About what, sweetheart?" "About Mom, about Greg, about the fact that everyone in this town knows what's going on except you." My daughter was 5'6" with Alison's blonde hair and my stubborn chin. She'd inherited the best of both of us, which made this conversation even more painful. "What do you think you know?" "I know Mom's having an affair. I know she's planning to leave you. I know everyone's talking about it behind your back." "Sam?" "I know you know, Dad. I can see it in your face. So why aren't you doing anything about it?" I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "What would you like me to do?" "Fight for your marriage. Fight for our family. Don't just sit there and let her destroy everything we've built." "It's complicated, sweetheart." "No, it's not." Sam slammed her hand on the table. "She's cheating on you with her boss, and you're acting like it's no big deal." "It's a very big deal, but I can't force your mother to love me." "You can stop letting her make a fool out of you." Before I could respond, Alison's car pulled into the driveway. Sam and I looked at each other, and I saw my own pain reflected in her eyes. "Please, Dad, do something." Alison walked through the door carrying shopping bags from expensive stores I couldn't afford. She was glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen from her in years. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing our expressions. "We need to talk," I said. "Can it wait? I have plans this afternoon." "With Greg?" The shopping bag slipped from her hands. For the first time in months, I saw real emotion on her face, fear. "What did you say?" I said, "Can it wait, or do you have plans with Greg?" Sam stood up. "I'll be in my room." "No," I said. "Stay. This affects you too." Alison's face cycled through several expressions: guilt, anger, calculation. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about the Riverside Inn. I know about Tessa covering for you. I know about the apartment, the restaurants, the lies. Dad has pictures," Sam added quietly. Alison whirled on our daughter. "You knew about this?" "Everyone knows about this, Mom. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" For a moment, I thought Alison might confess, might break down and apologize and beg for forgiveness. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and looked me in the eye. "Jack, our marriage has been over for years. We both know it. I found someone who makes me happy, and I'm not going to apologize for that." "What about our family?" "What about it? Sam's 18, she'll be fine, and you and I, we've been strangers for years." "Because you've been living a double life. Because we want different things. I want more than this house, this town, this small life you've built for us." "This small life I built for us? I worked my ass off to give you everything you wanted." "You gave me what you thought I wanted. You never asked what I actually wanted." Sam stood up abruptly. "What I wanted was parents who loved each other. What I wanted was a family that didn't make me ashamed to go to school. What I wanted was a mother who didn't screw around behind my father's back." "Samantha." "No, Mom. You don't get to lecture me about what I want. Not anymore." Sam stormed out of the room, leaving Alison and me alone. "So what now?" I asked. "Now I pack my things and move in with Greg. We'll figure out the divorce details later." "Just like that?" "Just like that." As I watched my wife of 22 years walk upstairs to pack her belongings, I realized that the woman I'd married was already gone. Had been gone for a long time, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite our history. I wasn't going to let her paint me as the villain in her story. The war was just beginning. Alison moved out on Sunday. She packed 2 suitcases and left everything else behind. As if 22 years of marriage could be reduced to a few changes of clothes and some jewelry. "I'll come back for the rest later," she said. "Take your time." She paused at the door. "Jack, I hope you understand that this isn't about you. You're a good man. We just want different things." "I understand perfectly." After she left, Sam and I sat in our empty house and tried to figure out what came next. "Are you okay, Dad?" "I will be." "What are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter, this amazing young woman who'd inherited my sense of justice and her mother's intelligence, and made a decision. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." "What do you mean?" "Your mother wants to rewrite history. She wants people to think our marriage just fell apart naturally, that sometimes these things happen. She doesn't want anyone to know about the lying, the cheating, the betrayal. So I'm not going to let her." That evening, I called Mike and asked him to meet me at the shop. When he arrived, I showed him everything. The photos, the messages, the evidence I'd been collecting. Jesus, Jack, this is a gold mine. I want you to help me plan something. What kind of something? The kind that makes sure Greg Patterson and my wife never forget what they did to my family. Mike grinned. Now you're talking. We spent the next 3 hours planning what Mike called Operation Payback. It was simple, elegant, and completely legal. The annual Millbrook Founders Day Festival was next Saturday. The whole town would be there, including Alison, Greg, and everyone who'd been gossiping about my marriage for months. I was going to give them something worth talking about. The festival was held in Millbrook Park, a sprawling green space in the center of town. Local businesses set up booths, food trucks lined the streets, and a stage in the center hosted live music and community announcements. Greg had volunteered to be the master of ceremonies, no doubt seeing it as an opportunity to raise his profile in the community. He stood on the stage in his perfect suit, welcoming everyone to the celebration with his practiced politician's smile. Alison stood near the front of the crowd, wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. She looked happy, radiant even, free. I waited until Greg finished his opening remarks and called for the first performer, a local high school band. Then I made my move. "Excuse me," I called out, walking toward the stage. "Before they start, I'd like to say something." Greg's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, but the schedule is pretty tight. It'll just take a minute." I climbed the steps to the stage before he could stop me. The crowd murmured as I took the microphone. I could see Alison's face in the audience, pale with sudden fear. "Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Jack Morrison. I own Morrison's Auto Repair down on Elm Street." Scattered applause from people who knew me. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank some people who've been really important to me lately. First, I want to thank my wife, Alison Morrison, for 22 years of marriage. More applause. Alison looked like she was going to be sick. Alison works at Serenity Springs Wellness Center, where she's been having an affair with her boss, Greg Patterson, for the past 8 months. The crowd went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I also want to thank Greg for showing me what my wife really thinks of our marriage, our family, and the life we built together. Greg tried to grab the microphone, but I stepped away from him. I have photos if anyone's interested. They've been meeting at the Riverside Inn every Tuesday and Thursday, room 237. Greg pays with his company credit card, by the way, so technically the wellness center has been subsidizing their affair. The crowd erupted. People were shouting, pointing, pulling out their phones to record. I could see Alison pushing through the crowd, trying to escape. I also want to thank Tessa Brennan for helping them cover it up, and all the ladies from the wellness center who've been planning my wife's exit strategy for months. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I've got screenshots of all their conversations, of planning sessions about how to handle Jack when Alison finally left me, discussions about Greg's new condo and where they'd go on their honeymoon. Really touching stuff. Greg finally managed to get close enough to grab my arm. "That's enough." I looked at him, this soft, privileged man who'd stolen my wife and humiliated my daughter, and smiled. "You're right. It is enough." Then I punched him in the face. Greg went down like a sack of cement, his perfect nose streaming blood onto his perfect suit. The crowd roared its approval. Security guards were moving toward the stage, but I wasn't finished. "One more thing," I called out as they approached. "Greg's been embezzling money from the wellness center. Fake expense reports, inflated travel costs, phantom consulting fees. I've got copies of everything." I tossed a manila envelope into the crowd. Someone might want to give that to the police. The security guards reached me then, but I didn't resist. I'd said what I came to say. As they led me away from the stage, I looked back at the chaos I'd created. Greg was still on the ground, holding his broken nose. Alison had disappeared entirely. People were fighting over the envelope, shouting questions, recording everything with their phones. Tessa Brennan stood at the edge of the crowd, staring at me with something that might have been respect. "Nice speech, Jack," she called out. "You always were smarter than she gave you credit for." The police held me for 6 hours before releasing me with a citation for disturbing the peace and assault. Greg declined to press charges, probably because he didn't want more attention on his financial crimes. By the time I got home, the story had exploded across social media. Videos of my speech were being shared thousands of times. Jack Morrison was trending on local Twitter feeds. Sam was waiting for me in the kitchen. "Dad, what did you do?" I told the truth. "You punched Greg Patterson in the face on live television." "That was just a bonus." She stared at me for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "I can't believe you actually did it." Your old man's full of surprises. My phone had been ringing nonstop. Reporters, friends, strangers who'd seen the videos online. I ignored them all except one. Mike called around midnight. "You beautiful bastard," he said. Do you know what you've done? Hopefully ruined their lives. Greg's been fired. The Wellness Center board called an emergency meeting tonight. Turns out your little financial expose was dead accurate. Good. Alison's disappeared. Someone saw her loading suitcases into her car around 10 o'clock. Word is she's heading back to her sister's place in California. Even better. Jack, you know this is going to follow you around forever, right? This town's got a long memory. Let them remember. Let them remember that Jack Morrison doesn't roll over and play dead when someone tries to destroy his family. What about Sam? What about your business? I looked around my kitchen, at the home I'd built with my own hands, at the life I'd created through hard work and determination. Sam's proud of me. She told me so. And my business? Hell, Mike, I'll probably get more customers now than ever. Everyone loves an underdog who fights back. You're probably right. I know I'm right. We talked for another hour, rehashing every moment of the day. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. I walked out to my garage and looked at my Mustang, still waiting patiently for me to finish her restoration. Tomorrow I'd get back to work on her. Tomorrow I'd start rebuilding my life, one piece at a time. But tonight, I was going to savor my victory. I'd lost my wife, but I'd kept my dignity. I'd lost my marriage, but I'd gained my self-respect. Most importantly, I'd shown my daughter that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you, especially when the odds are stacked against you. The garage door was open, and I could see the lights of Millbrook twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Greg Patterson was nursing a broken nose and a ruined career. Somewhere out there, Alison was running away from the mess she'd made. And somewhere out there, people were still talking about the mechanic who'd refused to go quietly into the night. I picked up my wrench and got back to work on the Mustang. There was still a lot of restoration to do.